First off, yes, I've seen the preview details for Cho Superhero Tyson. Once again, they are completely missing the points. They assigned Shoji Onomura to write it, Osamu Kaneda is directing it. I assume, without even really knowing it yet, that Shinichiro Shirakura is in charge of the movie because he's the only idiot at Toei that hires those two. And furthermore, I have seen that they're now making Kamen Sentai Go Rider a thing in the film. Are you that seriously creatively bankrupt for this kind of thing? This is shit Shinichiro Shinomori knew not to do, because all of his character designs for heroes were distinct. Admittedly, there was some commonalities between successive heroes, but that's because he wanted to keep a consistency between successive heroes. He didn't simply just copy-paste shit together, especially shown by Aldo the Fox and the Tokopedia Kamen Rider Anniversary Archives thing, posts he's been doing on Tumblr, shows all the developmental stuff and differences in the design details that he knew not to use because they were not distinct enough for the actual heroes they were going to make. This is seriously the bottom of the barrel in the same way the other Tyson films have been in taking things out of context from their original utilization and shoving in there as if that is seriously what those original creators would have done. This is seriously one of the dumbest things I've seen since Kamen Rider Sango. Seriously. But to actually get to discussing the episodes of this week, Kyuranger was passable. It is still compounded by every single problem of the first episode, in that it's rapidly paced, it's reliant on Deus Ex Machina and coincidence for its story structure, there's too much within the story to let any of it breathe, and a lot of the characters are still acting stupid. But at least it's competently presenting all of these elements instead of just shoving in one thing after the other without any chance to allow elaboration on them or to let the story breathe by any chance. So obviously, as the Kyuranger are still assembling, Lucky throws a dart at a star chart map, and of course, that is where they're going to get the next two Kyuranger, the gold and silver ones, who are themed after the balance scale constellation Libra, and a snake, Orphana. I can't actually pronounce the word they use for his name. It's based off of Snake. This is going to play havoc when I get to the Mega Man Star Force series, because they have a character in that series that is named after the same constellation. Regardless, I still have the exact same problem I had last week with this, and Lucky's just random Deus Ex Machina-ing of them into finding the next Kyuranger. And you know how easy it is to fix this? All of the Kyutama radiate some type of energy. They are an energy source in and of themselves. Why can't Rebellion use their existing Kyutama to track the same type of energy signatures from inactive Kyutama? And the more of them they have, the more accurate or powerful their ability to scan for others is to find the other Kyuranger. That would justify them finding Garu, and hell, if Lucky's Kyutama was inactive, then it would be harder to spot. Or B, intercept a broadcast from, Jark Matter that they found Kyutama in the possession, and they're being held by a world commander, so you're not relying on this stupid Deus Ex Machina utilization of Deus Ex Machina to lead you from point to point. You have options, and you're choosing to be lazy and further glorify this one character's presence while denigrating everyone else, as these are so simple technical ways to do this, which you already have as showing being there with Raptor's piloting of the ship, knowing all the research, presenting all of these other details about it that should be just such an obvious thing for them to do. I mean, you gotta have a scientist amongst the crew. Why not? It might as well be the robot that's the royal smart person. Ugh. But yeah, Lucky leads them to the planet, which has Balance and Naga. Extended A sound because there's two A's in his name, who are thieves that are after a crystal in the possession of that world's commander from Dark Matter, as it's a controlled world. Now again, this is why potentially intercepting a transmission about its being in their hands is useful for this, as then it shortcuts them relating into these two thieves and their own plan to get the crystal. So obviously a simpler way of doing this story would be for, say, one of the Kyuranger to know of these legendary thieves and want to team up with them so they can get these Kyutamas out of Dark Matter's hands and they can get the crystal. Win-win there. With then the episode instead has Lucky run into them literally out of the blue as they're trying to get Dark Matter's attention back on chasing down Balance and Naga, because in the episode they were offended that Dark Matter had a bigger bounty on the Kyuranger than on them. Here's the problem with this. Thieves do not want a bigger bounty. They don't want to be noticed by people. Admittedly, some of them do, but they're usually the infamous ones who are so confident in their abilities they believe they can't be caught. Thus, they taunt their chasers, not their chasers, their pursuers. But normally, if you're trying to do this correctly, these thieves should not be proud of their bounty and offended that someone else got a bigger one for being a more popular threat. They're thieves. They don't want to be well known. They want to disappear into the night unnoticed, having tricked all these people into getting it. So it's like, they're not even thieves. They're just ruffians that like to take things with them. So you're undermining your own emphasis with how you're introducing the characters. How do you screw this up? This is again basics for this. Toei does this in One Piece. Nami, despite being the weather wizard, weather witch, weather something something, is still primarily a thief, and she uses deceptive tactics all the time to get money from people. She still steals it from pirates, and not exactly nice people, but that is what she does. That is what she specializes in. She is still a straight-up thief. Here, they're burglars. They're not even on the level of thief. They're just bum rush into a place and take stuff. And, you know, that's not a good thing. It's like, you keep using this word. I do not think it means what do you think it means. Admittedly, they do have a bit of a deceptive tactic, as Balance, the gold robot of the pair that is very emotive and expressive, tricks Lucky into helping them infiltrate the base. Except Balance's plan is, since he's irritated at the Kyuranger having higher bounties than them, is going to turn Lucky over so he can get off scot-free with what he wants. And he does so. It's only when his partner, Naga, decides to stand up for Lucky and say they're comrades, as in Lucky and Naga are comrades, does Balance have a, I'd say change of heart, but he's a robot, and go back to save them after, I shouldn't say after, well yeah, after they're captured in Balance's presence. He then goes off to steal the diamond he's after. But then the change of heart happens as they're about to be executed, so he saves them. And Lucky the entire time is a happy-go-lucky idiot, as without any evidence, he says that Balance is going to save them, which admittedly he is, but not from any action Lucky committed or any action in Balance's actual character. The only reason that he actually went and did it is because he had again, a change of heart. That is out of character for his prior actions, and it required a flashback to a scene we weren't allowed to see before, meaning they're retconning in this rationale for him instead of presenting it as part of his character, of balance connecting deeply with Naga's pursuit for emotion. And here's the other thing about this that annoys me, in that Balance is the emotive robot, and Naga is supposed to be presented as an emotionless logical being that actually covets having emotions, except from the episode, he is very emotive. He speaks in a monotone, but there are inflections all about his portrayal, and he learns of and unleashes the emotion of anger, which is a horrible, horrible, horrible emotion to start out with. Star Trek called this out with Data when he finally started getting emotions, and the first one he was influenced to have by his brother Lore was anger, and unsurprisingly, that led to all types of bad things. And you know what? I actually kind of get Naga's desire for emotions, but again, it would work better with the robot. The robot would make so much more sense, as, you know, that's usually a thing you'd like to see with robots, instead of, you know, the kill all humans type of robots that we're usually presented as seeing in these series. So, Naga, I think, from how they quickly brushed over his species as having abandoned emotions, except they don't get into why his species have abandoned emotions. It's like, they're trying to make them out to be Vulcans, but of a, instead of that being a intended pursuit of their race due to the strength and volatility of their emotions require them such a deep level of control over them that they barely emote. They still have emotions, except they're comparatively blunted when they actually appear because of those control issues. It's saying that they entirely abandoned them, and Naga is abnormal because he wants to experience them, as opposed to his race that abandoned them because they all they removed them so that they would no longer covet battle and war, except those things are not what cause war. It's the abuse of those emotions that cause war, like sadism and anger, aka the first emotion Naga is shown to be experiencing in the show, and hate. Those are causes for people to become obsessed with war. It's like, you're showing him as wanting to feel the best of emotion, except you're only showing him the negative aspects of emotion. You are so missing the point, it's not even funny. And you know, a lot of sci-fi series have the more stoic character in them. I have, of course, cited Spock as the one for Star Trek. Teal'c in Stargate SG-1 was a bit more stoic, but you see that's from his personal character and a military upbringing, as other people of his race are a lot more emotive than them, at least having a more subdued inflection of that emotion most of the time. Stargate Atlantis had Ronan, whose stoicism was brought from years of being on the run in isolation, and the related trauma of his entire homeworld being exterminated. Star Trek TNG had, at different times, Worf, who, again, that's more based on restraint and self-control once you got past the early seasons, and Data, who would always pepper his speech with a variety of kinder inflections. So it's like he actually was emotionless, but it was, even through his emotionless, he possessed polite inflections. Star Trek Voyager had Tuvok, which was kind of going along the lines of a parody of Vulcans, because they did, the people who wrote Voyager and Star Trek Enterprise didn't really know how Vulcans worked. DS9 I don't really think they did that in DS9. The closest they had was Odo, and he showed emotional moments all the time. Even when Worf got over there, he was a bit more emotive, so I don't think they had a good example for that over there. But yeah, it's a recurring thing in sci-fi to have the more stoic or not as emotive character. And they could have easily done that with the robots. They could have easily flipped it so that he was a naive mechanoid wanting to learn of the passions of emotions because something damaged in him or he wasn't built with them, so it would awaken over the series to possess that. And Naga's species actually being the one who was deceiving, manipulating him, only to become attached to his companion due to the honesty he presented himself with in this thing. And hey, that would actually fit more with their aligned constellations, because serpents are usually portrayed as deceptive, clever, and wily or especially, with the eye ability there to overcome them. So, the phrase is, you're a snake, as a comparison for people who lie, cheat, steal, etc. And balance is more the people in equilibrium who can do both good and bad things while still remaining neutral. So it would make more sense for their characterization to be swapped between the two of them, especially with Naga's little eye ability. But as they're using them, it would also make more sense, shown with Naga's eye ability to restrain and paralyze people for short periods of time, for that to be tied why his race chose to be more stoic intentionally, as this was a extremely destructive power that almost annihilated them due to their emotions being tied to the utilization of this power. So, you could have justified this if you'd given a bit more time to it. And it could have been given a bit more time to it had you not had to have all this exposition about Lucky using his powers again, his luck-based powers again, to get them to that point. You could have shortcut all these things by just changing the framing of the early scenes of the episode and getting Naga and Balance involved in getting to these thieves and this trinket. As the jewel Balance steals is what the Kyutama of the two of them manifest from. And of course, there is no explanation for this. There is no way of explaining how they manifested out of this stupid rock, because there's no sign of that they would form from this stupid rock. Instead, after Balance saves them, after Naga stood up for Lucky for a very stupid reason, and you know what that stupid reason was? Lucky supporting Naga in his wish to get emotions, like Balance was already. They say that Balance was, manipulating, abusing him with their relationship, but obviously since Balance came back for him, that is shown to be completely false. Thus, it more seems like Balance was prioritizing him and his friend over someone they just met who acts like an idiot and is obviously someone that could, if they handed him over, could get them out of trouble. He's prioritizing himself and his friend over an idiot, which is not exactly a bad thing. So again, I feel the episode fails in the grand scheme. It's not that it's presenting them badly, it's just that when you put a bit of thought into this, it all falls apart in comparison to other series that have done it, and the structure of its own episode. But whatever, we're now up to 7 Kyuranger, and next episode is going to give us their commander, who is member 10, possibly member 8 with the Scorpion dude, who they alluded to at the end of the episode, and that'll still leave Raptor's Kyutama MIA for presumably episode 4 or 5, depending on how they're going to play that out. Part of what irritates me about this episode is that the other four characters, who have barely been given any chance at a presence, are once more sidelined, and the only scene they get is an admittedly awesomely choreographed fight scene with more of the foot soldiers of the series and one of the high commanders of the Dark Matter organization, which we have been given little to nothing on due to the stupidly insane pace of this show. We really didn't even establish more than they're world conquerors, and in this episode that there's a hierarchical structure to how they've taken over the galaxy, which you really didn't even get good exposition on it because they skipped past it with lucky antics and tying all of the Kyutama they acquire to their home constellation systems, which solar systems are not constellations, so that's... Oh, they could be in the constellations, but again, constellations themselves are not systems. They're not organizations of... the organizations of stars that make up a constellation are not the same as an area of space, as there are two definitions. The constellations that you draw out of mapping of stars, and the actual organization of the cosmos from solely Earth's perspective, meaning if you go to any other planet of the universe, the way they would map such would completely change, which was my complaint about how they're utilizing this from last week. So, since they are using the shapes as their motifs and icons, it is not the same thing as constellations as defined by the 88 quadrants of known space that we divide them into to look at them through telescopes. That was my point with that last week. I know people have been defending this, but it's not something to be defended or explained about if the way the show is utilizing it is different than the way that would be in real life. So yeah, I'm really not liking the show, but it's amazing how different the pacing is from last week. That makes it, even though it's still stupid, it's still more enjoyable than just being hit with points and points and points and points. Yes. Trying to think of anything else I'm forgetting to even mention there. Nope, nothing I can think of. Exide! They pushed the reset button. They revealed Emu is infected with the bugsters to Emu, and by the end of the episode, normal Emu is back, and completely unawares he is infected by the bugster virus again. I don't think that was a good thing to do for the show. I think it would have progressed things better had he stayed aware of it to lead into next week, where he's trying to find the resolve to fight again, even with this knowledge, as it's presented at the end of the episode when normal Emu comes back. It's that he came back and forgot this detail about himself again. That's not a good thing. Especially since he spends most of the episode controlled by his gaming genius M persona, as if it was the actual bugster, and the bugster being in denial that it is a bugster, even though it's in control and acting completely different than normal Emu. There's like no recognition. Both sides are in denial, but from the preview information for next week, they need to not be in denial to be able to pull that off. But again, that's for next week. Instead, most of the episode is focused on Kagami and... Not Kagami? Yeah, is focused on Hiro Kagami and actually developing his character in a non-caustic way. As now, he's out of Gashots, Taiga's out of Gashots, and Emu is compromised by the bugster that's controlling him. Presumably by the bugster that's controlling him. We're still not completely certain on that. So he's finally asked to step up and show himself as a not douchebag, and he does that by acting, ironically, more like Emu, in that everything Emu can do, he should be able to do better because he is the world's greatest doctor, and yet his patient care is similarly terrible. This week we actually finally get new Bugsters. I'm finally glad they stopped recycling the old ones, but at least they're alluding to why as having a point to it, despite them ignoring such for all this time. And that is key to Dan's pursuit of the Kamen Rider Chronicle game, in that he needs death data, or just to do the absorption data of all 10 of the main Gashot's Bugsters to actually achieve that. So them not showing a bunch of the earlier ones earlier in the series retroactively makes sense now in how they were recycling the suits instead of creating new Bugsters for them to fight. I actually like this. It's filling a plot hole from earlier in the series and why they skipped over them in favor of the Calabros monsters. So yes, we finally get the 5th of the game Bugsters, and it's based on Gekitotsu robots, which Emu has a fun time fighting against, even though the Bugster is at level 30 and he goes at it with his level 3 form. There is a bit of Deus Ex Machina in here with the gaming power-ups, but admittedly, they're already part of the show. Emu using actually some pretty clever tactics to lure the robot's Bugster into a false sense of security, then hitting it with two interconnected power-ups to beat it down the first time and send it into submission. The other thing about that is, much like Emu, the virus has evolved again so that it's more of a parasitic no, it was a parasitic organism before. It's more symbiotic now in how it takes control of its hosts, to parallel what's been happening with Emu and his infection. The viruses are mutating and improving itself to be more like Emu. So, is it possible that his Bugster infection has reached the state of perfect symbiosis? And that's why, despite the split personalitying, that they can't get it to manifest separately from his body? I mean, it would explain why, when the Mighty Brothers Gashot manifested, it showed itself as fusing the Bugster virus with Emu completely. That's all stuff to think on for later, with how they might be going things with the show and the whole virus infection. But regardless, the host is then cared for by Kagami, and we see for the first time his bedside manner, and it's definitely still detached, but it's not as uncaring as we've been previously led to believe with everything, though that might also be more tied to how he usually acts versus him trying to take up more of Emu's role to try and wake the guy up and remind him of who he actually wants to be versus what he can easily backslide into. A lot of the episode is emphasizing how stress can be suppressed through mental fortitude, in that if you have a stronger mind and resistance to such, then you can you have a better chance of managing your stress, which is true. I mean, I work pretty much all the time on various things, and yet it's, you know, taking breaks, knowing how to manage that stress that has kept me from completely going bonkers at times. So there is truth to his words, and for once he's not really acting like an asshole. They do say he's being a bit reckless with how, in the rematch with the Bugster, with Genom back on the board, he then uses Exide's Gashats as a lure to the Tattle Fantasy support monster to lure it to one of the power-ups that causes it confusion. So it seems like he's being a bit reckless like Emu can be, which Emu really isn't. He just knows the tactics of the gameplay. But he's similarly using a kind of suicidal tactic to leading the summoned monster there to confuse it, and then get it to attack Genom, so the Geargasha dual beta falls into his hands. Speaking of, Tattle Fantasy, and Brave level 50. Yes. All of the yes. This is on the level of Laser level 3 in how good it looks. It looks absolutely fantastic. Its abilities are fantastic, using a bunch of Final Fantasy abilities, because of course, this is your Final Fantasy. The Final Fantasy homage for the series. With this game and form, and all of its magical abilities are used excellently by Brave, which shows that he actually has been watching how Emu fights and has been building that into his own way of doing things, especially since he's had to more tie himself into how to play the games to win with the Gashats, as shown earlier with his difficulty in using Do, Re, Mi, Fa beats. Yes, that's the name of it, isn't it? I am terrible with names. So yeah, with that, he retrieves his own base Gashats and Dragonite Hunter from Genom and resets the status quo, I guess. It's hard to describe to me what's different with him, because he's not really acting much different than he was before, but less of him insulting Emu for being the new guy when he obviously doesn't have the experience for a lot of the things Kagami's expected of him. So it's more like the show is not intentionally making him an asshole anymore in this instance, and he kind of misses how Emu used to act, because not caring about things is not Emu. Even before, with when M would peek through, it's still shown he was caring about people, and that was also reflected in the Mighty Brothers when M would use it. That he never intentionally cut himself off like this. So it's like it's out of character for his Bugster self to be this extreme with things as well. Yes. So yeah, I'm curious how they're going to deal with this fallout, and whether the full status quo is going to stick around, or if there's going to be more of a blending of Emu and M that kind of should have started to show up with this whole distorted self that was present here. Zero Dragon Blood. I don't know what to say about this one. It seems like it's the episode that's wrapping the story, but we've got another 5 episodes at minimum to the series here. As Adele gets the dragon egg out of the cage. How? He tempts Alice with the idea of seeing the dragon born. I hate this. I so absolutely hate this, because they can do this after they've dealt with Adele. Everything Adele says to Alice to get her to open the cage are things she and Ray can do with it after his threat is no longer there. She put everyone's lives in danger for her own selfish wish that she would have seen fulfilled had she done nothing and just waited for Ray to show up. Nothing in this episode precluded them actually taking the dragon out of the cage with this, as all Alice does with the egg for the rest of the episode is keep it away from Adele after he's out of his cage, when she could have just taken the cage and run after Ray showed up. Instead, now it's out of its cage, and Adele is presumably going to be coming back from the dead, because of course that's how this is going to work with the episode count that's left. Even though Kagome, at the cost of her own life, blasted a hole in his chest. I'm assuming that the older Makai priests and knights who sealed him away in the first place already tried this, and yeah, no, he is definitely coming back with the amount of episodes they still have left in this show. Ugh. Otherwise, that's pretty much what happens. Kagome and Rekka fight a amalgam mechanical creation thing that Adele sends after the lot of them to prevent them from getting to him. Kagome asking Rekka if Kagome can be her disciple, but Rekka really doesn't have the, what's the phrase? What is the phrase I want to use for this? She doesn't have the patience to be a teacher as of yet, and her position in the Senate would kind of make that not exactly a good thing. I think had they given more time before things, that they could have spent an episode actually exploring this instead of, rushing to the Adele fight that is just going to be something that comes back again later anyways, because of course it is. And they just rushed past it to her character's death. I don't feel that was a good utilization of these points, as it doesn't let it really settle in your mind that Rek is ready for that. No, that's not what I want to say. It doesn't really settle in your mind that one of the last requests of a woman that then dies is simply to seek to improve herself. It's like, it's mentioned in 2 scenes and then she's dead. So that's not exactly a... They could have cut that element of the episode, and I wouldn't say it's to its improvement, but it wouldn't seem like it's pointless bits in it. Zero versus Adele, round 2. They get some good exchanges here. Adele tries to sell himself as the same as Ray in wanting to protect humanity, and except that's kind of, sabotaged by how he wants to destroy the world. It's like, you kind of screwed up in your pursuit if you don't characterize the people who live in the world, if you don't relate the people who live in the world you want to protect with the people in the world, with the world you want to destroy. Or, he became so jaded with people that he abandoned that pursuit. And if that's what he was trying to convey to Ray, that going back to the whole Garo argument of people are awful, so why do you still protect them? If that was what they were trying to do there, and do that for Ray as they did in Zero Black Blood, then they missed it because there's missing dialogue to that conversation. I mean, I think they're trying to pull what they did with Jinga in Goldstorm with him, and that in how he became jaded, but you're missing the story points for it, unfortunately. So yeah, Adele is down for the moment with a giant hole in his chest, and he's not dead. He is definitely not dead. He is either going to be revived as long as there's a dragon living in the realm, which is probably key to why having dragons around anymore was so foolish, so that dragon hatching might result in him coming back. We don't know yet. Alice having gotten away with being stupid again, and God even knows where they're going with this next. Yeah, that's all I got for this week. Other updates, normal reviews should be back pretty soon, and I guess I'll see you all next time.